welcome to MindMakers. I'm John Kim, co-founder and CEO of Sandbird. On this talk, I talk to people who are building the future of artificial intelligence, from founders, executives to technologists who are shaping the future of AI and its real-world impact. Today, I'm joined by Guy Gur-Ari, co-founder of Augment Code, the most powerful AI coding platform or software development platform with the industry-leading context engine. And from what I know, Augment Code really focused on complex, large-scale enterprise code projects. And you co-founded Augment after working at Google as a research scientist, where you led the research team focus on deep learning system. And now your team is focused on supercharging software engineers. So really want to learn more about that. But Guy, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Nice. All right. Well, to kick things off, tell us, the audience, a little bit about your business and your story.
So we started Augment about 3 years ago with a premise that we expected models to get better rapidly. We thought there was an opportunity to build product for software developers in particular around AI for code. And we thought that focusing on context would help us build the best possible product. Because especially when you go to large teams working on large code bases, they need AI coding assistants that really understand their code base. And so we built everything from completions, next edit feature chat, and now all the way to agents that really do a lot for you. And we have the best product in this space thanks to the context engine, where it really feels like it understands the code base and works with you to accomplish your tasks.
Nice. And it seems like the vibe coding platform or industry has been kind of really taking off in the past couple of years. So I'm kind of like curious, can you share how your team at Augment Code views this like massive surge of interest, and where you see real opportunities going forward with this technology?
Yeah, so I think the very exciting thing we've seen over the past year or so is that agents have really come of age, right? This has been the promise, I think, since the beginning of generative AI, is to have agents that not only do question answering, but can also take care of tasks for you. And we've seen them now become so good that we think that they are ready to go beyond the inner loop of software development, which is where most of the action is happening today and what we've built our product around. You can do feature development, you can do bug fixing, things like that. And we think that the next step here is to let these agents work more autonomously on more tasks. And so we're seeing customers use Augment to do automated ticket to PR flows, just one-shotting tickets, analyzing production logs and opening tickets automatically, incident response, all kind of new things that have become feasible because agents have gotten so good.
That's interesting because, of course, there are platforms like GitHub that came out with Copilot, and a lot of, development and engineering tools arose from this kind of code repositories. But think about like incident management, things like that. There are other players like whether it be GitLab, Datadog. There are a lot of companies that helps with software engineers to monitor and deal with incidents. Do you foresee like a world where AI agents will be able to deal with like incidents, outages autonomously in the next couple of years? How fast is that world coming?
Couple of years, yes. I would bet yes that agents will be able to handle at least a meaningful fraction of those, because whenever you're looking at a broad area like incident response, you have the low-hanging fruit, which is the simpler things to handle. And then you have the more complex ones where still I think agents can be effective in shedding light on an issue, even if a human is involved. So I think you can provide value throughout kind of the complexity spectrum of these issues. And yes, if we're talking about years, I'm fairly sure agents will be able to help with a lot of that.
I think some of the best engineers have really good like intuition around if something like an outage happens, right? They kind of get a good sense of which module, which part of the code base is causing these kind of like outages. Maybe through automation and I guess agents kind of tackling this, maybe hopefully we can get to the 4 nines and the 5 nines while people are sound asleep. I think that's a very, very exciting future for many of the engineers who are on calls. Now, there are quite a few AI, software or software development platforms out there, like the GitHubs of the world. It started with like GitHub Copilot. Now there's Replit, a few other guys. Like, how do you guys see yourself differentiating in the market? Is it different segments, different feature sets? How do you guys stand out?
Yeah, so we build our product with large teams in mind. And so large teams means 50 plus developers, and it can go up to thousands or more of developers. And then correspondingly, the size of the code base can be many, many millions lines of code. And really, if you use our product to do 0 to 1 development, you start from nothing and you want to build a web app, you will get good results out of it. But I don't think you will see a lot of differentiation. The differentiation comes in when you're really trying to tackle problems in a large code base, because that's where it becomes very important for the agent to understand its surroundings, to understand the patterns that are in the code base, to do proper code reuse, many things like that that we provide to the agent through our context engine. And so we provide the agent with real-time understanding of the developer's view of the code base. As the code base evolves, we evolve the context that we're showing the agent in real time. And we found that when developers end up using our tools and comparing them to others, this is where they see the biggest difference.
And sounds like you guys probably deal a lot with like mid-market, maybe enterprises.
Yep.
With large engineering teams. But when we talk to a lot of enterprises, there's still that hesitation around adopting AI. So from your vantage point, what are some of the non-obvious obstacles that's holding broader AI adoption from the customers that you're targeting?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So when we talk to leadership at these companies, their number one concern is with adoption of AI tools. Of course, the better the tool, the better adoption you're going to see. And we see good numbers relative to the market, but certainly adoption is still a hurdle. And I think it comes down to a few factors. First, if you think about a feature like completions, it doesn't take a lot to adopt it, right? Completions fits in very nicely into the flow of developers. It kind of just accelerates what you're doing anyway. And so their adoption is fairly simple. But if you fast forward now to agents, using agents effectively requires changing a lot of habits. Sometimes these are habits that you've had for many decades as a developer. For example, instead of looking at the code all the time and writing it, you are now guided to use this prompt box where you need to guide the agent, and now you're reading the code that the agent is writing. A totally different workflow for writing code. And that takes a lot of adjustment. You also need to then learn how to properly prompt the model, because we give you this sort of hyped magical box where you put in your prompt. But also, if you don't do it well, you're going to get garbage. And if you do it really well, you're going to get magic out of it. And how do you learn how to prompt these things well? That's another challenge. And so I think it takes changing habits. There's certainly a learning curve to these tools. One trick that we've seen works quite well is if you know someone who is a power user of these tools and keeps raving about how much productivity they're getting out of them, if you look over their shoulder for 10 to 20 minutes as they're using these tools, you will probably pick up several useful tricks on like, okay, this is how you prompt, this is how you review the code, this is how you take checkpoints so that if it goes off the rails, you can revert. You will learn a lot in a short amount of time. So that's been one pretty effective way, I think, for people to come up to speed on making the most out of these tools.
That's fascinating because when we talked about cars before coming to the show, there are still a lot of people who stick to the manual stick shifts, right? Like when you go on a circuit, I want manual stick shifts and manual everything. And there, of course, like the auto gears, but then like in the new kind of autopilot with the EV vehicles, there's almost like a hesitation from the OG, the true drivers, to adopt like the electric vehicles and automatic gears. So do you see some kind of similarities when it comes to adopting these kind of autopilot even within the engineering group?
Certainly, yes. I think for many developers, the reason they got into software development and the reason they love doing it is writing code. And that is sort of the first thing that gets taken away when you're using the agent, because the idea is that it's writing the code for you. And so you still need to supervise, you still need to think deeply about the problem. If you just vibe code and don't look at what it does, you're going to get yourself into trouble, no doubt. You're going to end up with a very unmaintainable system, but you're not writing code anymore. And I think for many developers, that is that is a difficult thing to give up. And what I can say personally is I also love writing code. It's also my favorite thing about, let's call it classical software development. But what I found with agents is that you get new kinds of fun when you use it. When you're able to get up to speed with agents and run a few of them in parallel, working on different tasks, it almost feels like a superpower because you can accomplish so much in such a short amount of time that it's kind of mind-blowing. It's also pretty interesting, I would say, as a problem on its own to understand how to prompt the model, what are the failure modes, what can you do better with prompting to get more out of it. But it's different. It's different. Software development is changing. And with these new tools, it just looks different than it did before.
You've probably seen a lot of companies, enterprises, even software engineers individually unlock kind of new set of insights and almost like that aha moment when they start to adopt this AI coding platform. What's the most surprising second order effect you've seen when the customers start adopting Augment?
So recently, we started rolling out our CLI tool, which is the same Augment agent that you get in the IDE with a full context engine, just in CLI as a CLI form factor. We have users using it for interactive use cases, but we also have users that are using it for automating things. And I think as we were doing user interviews with our early users to understand, like we gave them this super general tool with a hope that they will do interesting, creative things with it. I was blown away at the depth and sophistication that some users got into within like a week of starting to use it. So we've seen one user who ended up writing very extensive guidelines for the agent about how their full system is operating, including details about the security posture and how the code is architected and so on and so forth, and set up this whole system so they'd be able to actually run the agent on a regular schedule and have them do things like scan for security vulnerabilities, analyze production logs, and assign tickets automatically. And it was this very, very sophisticated set of prompts and guidelines that they all just came up with on their own. We just gave them a very general tool that they could use for this purpose. And they put in on their side all this extra work for getting it to actually work. So that I found fascinating, like the level of value that users see in these tools that they're willing to, I mean, none of this is work that they would have done on their own. This was not on their path, right? This is work that they've done because they believe that this tool can help them be so much more productive. And they've spent many, many hours investing in getting the tool to work for them. So this to me is a very interesting point in time where it's no longer like, oh, like, do you want to try this AI thing? See if it helps you. We're at a point where many users can see the value and are willing to invest serious time into unlocking this value.
Wow, that's amazing to hear. Wow. I think there's a saying I read somewhere a long time ago, was like, let the 100 flowers blossom. It's almost like you have this really great stem cell almost, and you give the superpower to the hands of your customers or users, and you're kind of blown away by the different use cases that they come up with. And I was meeting another YC founder recently, and normally when you try to organize your own personal whatever hobby stuff, we may use like spreadsheets and docs, but he actually built his own portfolio management website using vibe coding. I hope you use Augment. Haven't asked that question, but it's kind of blown away the quality of the website he was using to manage his own portfolio of collectibles. And that was very, very cool. Like that would not have happened if it weren't for AI coding platforms. So I'm kind of zooming out a little bit. Now, there has been rise and fall of a lot of tools in the past year or two, a lot of kind of trends. And as you know, engineers are generally drawn to shiny objects. When there's a new tool, they want to try it out. So how do you build an enduring business in such a rapidly changing industry like yourself?
As far as I can tell, you have to do a combination of things. First of all, you have to acknowledge that model capabilities are changing rapidly. And the problems that you're facing today, each problem you're seeing that you can, let's say, narrow down to a model quality problem or an intelligence problem, you have to take a bet basically on, is this problem going to be solved in the next small iteration? Like, is this problem just going to be solved 3 months from now, let's say 6 months from now? Or is this something we don't believe is going to be solved and we're going to have to do something about it ourselves? So that's one set of bets you always have to make. And sometimes we've gotten it right and sometimes we've gotten it wrong. I think as an example, file editing is a core capability of agents. It has to be like 100% reliable. That is, it needs to be free of false positives, essentially. Like you can't have the agent edit a file and misalign here or there, right? Because then you end up with just completely broken code. This was something previous models were really bad at, and we actually spent a lot of effort coping with that limitation of models. And then at some point, models just got good enough. And now all the frontier models can edit code, no problem. So that's one example, is understanding where models are headed, also through discussions with the model vendors to understand what it is that they're working on, and try to kind of skate to where the puck is in terms of model capabilities. I think the other thing I can say on making bets is, because of the time it takes to adopt these features, you want to, and nobody knows what's actually going to stick and what's not going to stick. There are things we developed that we were sure were going to be the next hit and didn't really pan out that way. And there are things that like we did as sometimes weekend projects, which we were like, oh, this could be a cool feature, and ended up being like one of our most popular features. Like we have a feature called the prompt enhancer, where you put in your half-baked prompt and you click a little sparkles button and it turns it into a sort of mini spec for you. You get better results out of it. You also get a chance to supervise the plan before it goes into action. It's become a very popular feature for us, which to me was pretty unexpected. So I think what the lessons we took from that were, in this space, I mean, it's always true, but in this space, you really have to build quickly, put things out there, get feedback very early, and make an early decision to keep or kill a project, even before you have all of the information. Because things are moving so fast, you just don't have time to spend like 6 to 12 months developing a feature and putting it to market and trying to get really good signals out of it and iterate on it multiple times. You got to make these decisions really early. So that's how we're operating now.
Wow, that's a really great example. So many thoughts. I can totally see a world where there's going to be kind of a similar software, but for, let's say, project managers. So a lot of project management, like if you think about how most of the projects are managed, whether it be on Jira or Trello boards and things like that, still it's the project manager's job to come up with the overall work structure, scheduling, all that. And I think a lot of work has been done in the past by somebody else, right? We don't have to reinvent the wheel, but the kind of the solution that you just described, I think a lot of engineers build a lot of tools for themselves to use, but it's almost like the tools for business people is almost like the afterthought. And that's how kind of SaaS industry evolved, was like, let's build tools for non-software engineers too. So I can totally see like a similar kind of AI coding platform, but AI project management software for, let's say, business owners. And I think that'd be a very cool use case. And I think what you just mentioned about AI models finally being able to write code, edit files, I think that's a super important capability. And I think also Sam Altman also talks about there are a lot of founders out there trying to add a little bit of improvement to the existing models. They're betting that AI models won't get better. But in most cases, you just have to make the assumption that AI models will get better. And what are the areas that AI models won't expand into? And those are the opportunities for business, or you're building on top of the assumption that AI models will get better. And I think there's where a lot of value creation happens, and you're kind of making that bet. One thing around the being able to write code or edit files. Recently, I think just given how powerful some of these AI coding platforms are becoming, there was a famous case where a popular coding platform, AI agent, kind of went rogue and deleted one of the customer's databases, and I think kind of took X or Twitter by storm. So how do we make sure that some of these misaligned AI does something that goes off rails, that damages either organizations, certain nations, or even humanity by doing things, either sneaking in kind of like misaligned code or doing something that's like you're not supposed to do? Do you think that's how do you kind of protect the companies against that? And also, a loaded question: how does government, where should government step in to regulate, or can they regulate some of these things?
Hmm. So I would separate two risks here. One risk is the agent making mistakes and causing harm as a result. And the second kind of risk category would be some sort of malicious form, right? Like maybe um, some sort of prompt injection attack where somebody got the agent to do something bad, or something got slipped into training that caused the agent to act maliciously on its own. I think right now what we're seeing are the first category of failures happening, mistakes that the agent makes and are causing harm. I think we at Augment internally have been running agents for a while, and so far have seen we've had uh, instances of what you could call data loss, not production data loss, but for developers using it. I think a home directory probably got erased once, but the number of incidents we had has been like the ones I remember, like there were maybe one or two in like about a year now. Um, However, of course, once you start putting these things into production systems, the stakes become higher. And we are working, because we care so much now about using these tools for automation. This is a key piece of what we're trying to solve for, is how do you put the proper guardrails around the agent when you're no longer in an environment where the human can kind of see the agent going off the rails and say, no, 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 and click the stop button, right? There's no one that's going to click the stop button anymore. And so you have to put more guardrails around it. I think it starts with much stronger configurability around tool permissions, and giving users the ability to really control what is allowed, what's not allowed, what should be escalated to a human, and then you just wait for a human's response, and so on. You just want to put all of that control in users' hands and give them as fine-grained control as possible. Again, because so far the agents, in the beginning at least, they were working on the code, and code is versioned with Git. And so if you're not doing anything dramatic, you're going to be able to roll back. But now that it's connected to GitHub and your ticketing system and production logs and so on, deployments, then yes, there is the chance to cause real harm. I think for us, it just means putting more and more guardrails around these things and putting users in control. I think on the question of should government get involved, my opinion is no. I mean, to give an example that is somewhat similar, cybersecurity is an industry that addresses threats, again, both from negligence and just like mistakes that happen, and from malicious actors. And I'd say we're able to deal with these risks fairly well, just using normal market dynamics. Companies emerge that solve needs, and then the field evolves and so on. I expect the same to happen here. I don't see the need for government intervention.
Nice. Yeah. It almost feels like how vibe coding or this AI assisted coding platform have evolved. It almost feels like music going from classical music, very well defined, with set of rules and trends, to now like kind of jazz music almost. And humans have to kind of play along with AI. There's a lot of things you have to kind of feel and get a sense of where things are headed. But to your point, you can't really like stop midway. You have to go with the flow a little bit. But knowing that hopefully there's some repository that has a version control that you can always dial back to. One fear I kind of have is if you start doing some image search today, more image results are from AI generated images. It's already flooding the internet. So I can see a world where AI agents will be programming a lot of things in parallel. There will be more code obviously already happening generated by AI that people are just like hitting deploy. And because of the proliferation of this code base, maybe there's not enough even test code to test all the things that are being created. So by the time we realize there's some of the things that were not intended already got into code, has been out into production for a while, and only people realize it, I don't know, a week later, a quarter later, right? So how do we kind of dial back? And do we know to what point do we need to dial back and things like that? Like, how do you foresee humans being able to monitor and understand what's actually going on?
Yeah, this is tricky because if you have a junior developer on your team and you're a senior developer and they're checking in code, you're well calibrated in the sense that you're going to be looking at that code pretty carefully to see what's happening. But also the rate at which junior developers generate code is not that high. It doesn't overwhelm your ability to review the code, right? They're not that fast. I mean, no developer is that fast. But with AI, the first thing that happens is you can generate such tremendous amounts of code that the next bottleneck becomes code review. This is what we're seeing. And so one question here is, I think it's hard to expect humans to, I mean, ideally I can say, well, okay, the developers are still in charge and you should still rely, I mean, it's still their responsibility to review all of that code and so on. But that's a hard ask because so much code is getting generated and you don't want to be the bottleneck. It's like the pressure all goes on you. So I think what we'll need to do is we will need to develop better tools for code review. From what I've seen, the failures are less on, I mean, there is correctness. The code that gets generated is not necessarily correct, but there are deeper problems where it's just not well architected. That's really the time bomb, because you start making changes in there, and after a while, those changes accumulate. And if you're not architecting your system well enough, you're going to get into trouble in the sense that the agents are no longer going to be able to make progress on your code base. And you're not going to be able to either because it's just not well architected. So these are normal software development problems that we've had, and we've developed best practices around them before. And I think we will need to develop new best practices around how to work with AI. And I think it starts with better high quality code reviews using AI, again, because that's kind of like the next bottleneck, and that's not really being addressed right now.
It's interesting. I wonder, because I've seen a couple of YC companies that are doing AI code reviews. So really kind of like giving the code reviewers, humans, the superpower to be able to review a lot more things quickly and just giving the highlights of things that you should care about. There might be like a refactoring AI agents that's all their job is to just keep looking at the code and figure out a way to refactor the code. And hopefully AI model becomes smart enough where they can actually look at the architectures. You know what? I mean, humans are asleep, but throughout the night, let's just like completely change the architecture so it becomes cleaner because they have more set of information data sets and whatever production logs to look after. I think that'd be a pretty cool world. But I kind of joke that that's Terminator scenario. The Skynet is not going to be like some robots trying to come and kill us. It's going to be this subtle, passive-aggressive code that they inject into our code base around the world. But let's think about the positive future. Looking forward, what are you most excited about this future of AI-assisted coding platforms, or even potentially like fully agentic coding platforms?
Yeah. So again, to me, it goes back to the fact that we can now, with these tools, create so much more than we could before. We could try things out so much more easily. We can explore solutions to problems. Like I now see people routinely skip their normal planning tools and just go straight to code. So I see designers doing that. Like you could skip Figma and just code it up and look at the prototype and see if you like it. You can sometimes maybe skip a fully fleshed out spec and just try out to build a prototype as an engineer and see if the technical approach you thought would be good for the problem is actually good. So I'm very excited about what's happening around prototyping. And I feel like it's like one interesting piece of how software development is evolving, in that things are becoming a lot more code centric, and you need less of these auxiliary tools. You can just focus on the code. I think on the research side, what I'm excited about is what I believe will be the emergence of multi-agent systems. Those are still today a bit of a promise. They're in some of the products. You can have things like sub-agents, but I expect over the next, let's say, 6 months that we will see real production-grade multi-agent systems. And I think that will do 2 things. One is I expect that that will elevate the level of complexity of tasks that we can give these models. So right now, I think we're all calibrated on the level of tasks that frontier models are able to do. And I expect that with the right set of prompts and the right multi-agent setup, we will be able to take that to the next level and do new things in one shot that today still seem like science fiction. And I think it might also help reduce costs if you're able to have a more complex system. Then you're able to, let's say, have a mix of different models that can maybe be more task specialized because these things are still very expensive today. So that, to me, from the research perspective, is the thing I'm looking forward to playing with.
That's actually really interesting because at Sember, when we build AI agents, we actually also consider using layers of different models, because some models are more efficient or faster doing certain things like routing, different customer inquiries, making sure that we classify the intent more efficiently. And then also when it comes to voice versus text, multimodal, each model performs slightly different in terms of response time, how complex, like how much of a complex workflow can it handle. So we always try to like experiment with different models whenever they come out to figure out which modules need to be run by which model. And where the handoff begins and things like that. So that's actually interesting. And you kind of mentioned like there's mixture of experts, there's mixture of models, we call it MOM, and then mixture of agents, so MOA, I guess. And I think in the future, like then how do you have internal like kind of hypothesis or mental framework around which part of the software engineering will actually humans work will fully automated get replaced, which part will be the last? Or which models would be still be like running as a augmented fashion? Whose job is safe?
So one thing that I will bet on is safe is every person who has a say in where taste is important. Let's say it like that. Whenever taste is important and really trying to connect well with humans when you're building the products, it could be a PM, it could be a designer, but it also could be like a very product-minded engineer, people who really influence the product. That is something where I have so far not seen any hints that models can just automate that. Models can come up with nice UI, which still requires some steering, but to get them to actually build a delightful product, I have not seen any evidence that we're close to that. So that is one thing that I would bet is fairly safe. I think I've been watching a bit what's happening with music generation. And I think that is kind of a parallel story. You can now go from idea and like you can call like maybe a prototype of a song to like a fully fledged thing that seems pretty well, at least to my ears, seems like it's gone through like a producer fairly easily. But I have not yet seen a model that can actually from scratch generate like a very good song with no input. So taste, I feel, is one thing that will continue to matter. And I think the other thing, I'm a bit less sure about that one, but seems we're kind of far from automating it, is this high level steering in terms of design choices, software design choices and architecture, and making sure that at a high level, the system is well built. The models right now, they can crank out a lot of code, but they're really bad at setting up proper architecture, especially when you have an existing code base. This is still something that requires careful steering. And so I think it's maybe what I'm saying is, I think it's these more senior roles that, as far as I can tell, are fairly safe. Now, on the other hand, things are moving very rapidly. And so what's true today maybe will change a year or two from now. I don't know. But that's where I see just the most meaningful gaps right now in terms of the model capabilities.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's almost like AI is pretty good at getting down to a lower level of abstraction layer, but being able to elevate the abstraction layer to see the kind of bird's eye view of the architecture, where it's headed. Also, the time horizon right now is like here and now, but can AI agent think beyond a couple of hours of work to months of maintenance, upkeep, the overall architectural where the trend, business needs are headed? That requires long-term time horizon thinking, and maybe that's an area that AI or LMs are not really well developed just yet. Maybe it'll change. We'll see. I guess maybe slightly different question for you. Now that I'm assuming you have a lot of people who are using your software to code for the first time, or who are maybe not so proficient at coding, now have more confidence to be able to create more holistic or full code. What is like would it be a business trend or technology trend that you foresee like this is going to unlock so many new things because this newer generation of people are coming in, being able to use your software to create a lot more software, I guess, or code. What's the most exciting version of the future?
To me, what's exciting here is, so again, if we phrase it as the cost of code generation goes to zero, do we still live in a world where you need one company to build an app for millions of users to use, or can it become a lot more customizable in that maybe I can now create my own apps, or maybe take some sort of template of an app, but do a lot of customization on it to suit exactly my needs? Because one of the biggest challenges with product design is, how do you build a product where it's easy and delightful for many users to use? That's an incredibly hard problem. And part of why it's a hard problem is that it's really hard to get feedback from users and sort of condense that into a handful of choices that you make about building the product. But if code generation is so cheap, maybe you don't need to do that. Maybe you just need to give users the tool to adapt their apps to what they want to do. And so I'm very interested to see how things evolved in terms of the flexibility that I expect. Like, I don't think we're going to jump to a world where I just go into this sort of meta app store and ask it for an app and get an app that I like. I don't think we're close to that. But maybe the next step could be that I get a highly customizable app that I can talk to adapt the UI to my needs. Yeah, I find that fascinating because it would change like decades of how we've gotten used to building software. So that's why I feel it's so interesting, because it seems like such a disruptive thing to the ecosystem.
Almost like a personalized app store or personalized app developing platform where almost every single app on your app is somehow really tailored to you, instead of just like trying to find one greatest common denominator. You now have this like lots and lots of not even least common, it's like perfect common multiple for your own needs. It's super fascinating.
I think maybe to add one more aspect, it's just a separate aspect. I think right now there are all these walls in terms of context and abilities between the different apps. I can't easily connect my emails to my calendar. I can't easily connect my logs in the production system to the code. They're all living in silos. I think a term that I really like that is starting to come up is AX, agent experience, right? Build your product, not just for humans, but to be really easy for agents to use. This also really resonates with me because it's about context. We know that context is the main thing that makes agents work better alongside their inherent intelligence, the thing you get from training them well. And so I think if this, maybe we're headed toward a world where the context walls are going to come down and we're going to be able to share context across our different apps and use cases a lot more easily. We're starting to see that with MCP. That is also a very exciting world to be. If you couple that with me as a user being able to customize my experience to anything, it's kind of mind-blowing in terms of all the new possibilities that come up.
That's fascinating because internally, we coined the term A2A economy, basically agent-to-agent economy, where we foresee 3, 5, even 10 years down the road, there's going to be more information exchange, transactions, auction bidding between AI agents in the internet in the scale of 10 to 100 times more, if not thousands. Just like how financial markets evolve. When you're trading a stock, you're not almost never trading with a human being. You're always trading with an algorithm. And it happened in finance first because it's quantifiable, it's well structured, well defined. But in the world of LLM, now we have this unstructured, quality data that was not as structured like before, but still be able to interact. So almost going from this tightly integrated API integration to loosely coupled through MCP or A2A protocol. Now this AI agent can exchange information and you can make transactions, and the volume's gonna grow like wildfire. So that's a very, very exciting future for us. So like, what is the largest misconception about vibe coding that people have?
Yeah, I think the largest misconception is that vibe coding is not for serious work. It's just something for hobbyists who are getting into coding. And then I think it boils down a bit to your definition. If the definition is, yeah, you just like ask the agent to do stuff and you merge your code and never even look at it, yeah, that's a terrible idea if you're doing serious work. But if you mean the agent is writing all of my code and I supervise it and I learn how to, like, I don't maybe need to read every line, but I need to pay attention to the pitfalls and correct it when it does that. That's how I think about vibe coding. Then it is 100% for serious work, but it takes effort getting used to it. Also, if you're and getting it to work for you and changing habits often to get it to work for you. I think also if you're doing it in a large code base, it's definitely harder than doing 0 to 1. These models have been trained to give you web apps and mobile apps out of a prompt. They're really, really good at that. It's also, they're really good at that also because they don't have a lot of existing code context to deal with. They get to start from scratch and get to do whatever they want, and that works really well. You can still get a lot of that value in an existing large code base, but it's more complex. You need to supervise it more because the problem is inherently more complex. So I think vibe coding, if properly defined to mean, yeah, use the agent to write all of your code and supervise it well, you can unlock a lot of value out of it, but you have to do it. You have to know what you're doing. You have to do it responsibly. You still need to be a good developer to supervise it. But that's the biggest misconception that I've seen.
Interesting. Like how a lot of software engineers sometimes wrongly get promoted to becoming a people manager. It's like, oh, you're such a great engineer. You should manage a group of engineers, which almost always may not always be the best choice. But now, like a lot of software engineers have to become these managers of AI agents. Do you think they'll enjoy it, or where do you think they will fail?
Yeah, that goes back to the fun that we were discussing. Is like, where's the fun in software development? And are you still in? Do you still want to do this if you're not writing code anymore? So we're thinking about it more as you're a tech lead of your agents, because there's not a lot of people management style things that you do, but it really feels like being a tech lead. The emphasis, for example, is on clear communication. This skill transfers very well from being a tech lead into prompting. You need to be a very clear communicator. That's really kind of the key to prompting well. You need to think, what does the agent know? And how is that different from what I know? And how do I give it all the details that it needs to know? And then how do I explain the task in the clearest possible way? These are all basic tech leadership skills, right? Now, is that fun or not? I think that depends on the developer. The rewards are substantial because you do get to move incredibly fast when you unlock the value from these tools. And to me, I've gotten used to it. I have not written a line of code myself for the last 6+ months. The agent has been doing all of it, and I've had a lot of fun doing it, but it's been certainly an adjustment. Will you enjoy it or not? I think depends on you. It's hard to predict.
Yeah. Couple of questions, but if you could, because we work a lot with Fortune 500 or large enterprises, I'm sure you do too. You could install one kind of new mental model about AI that all Fortune 500 CEOs and CXOs should know. What is that message? And to plant in their heads.
I think that getting to the adoption that you want takes real work. It's not, the tools do work. It's not, there is a lot of hype out there, but we are seeing every day that there's also very real value there. But unlocking that value inside your organization requires work. It requires sessions where developers share their experiences, maybe webinars, and it requires a willingness from developers to engage and adopt these new technologies. But the value for coding is very much there. We see it every day, and we have very happy customers who have started using Augment, and they're seeing the adoption go up, and they're like, oh, okay, this stuff really works. Often it comes down to better context. Often it comes down to better techniques from prompting that developers learn. But ultimately, I think the value is real. The tools really do work beyond all of the hype.
So it's almost the opposite of technology. You need the human work to make the technology work for your organization.
Yeah, I think it's like every new tool that comes out, this has been hyped as like there's AGI, it's magic, and so on. To me, at this point, it's incredibly impressive, but it's still a new tool, and it's still a tool that you put in the hands of humans. And the humans still need to learn how to use the tool and use it well and use it safely, just like every previous new tool that came out. I think we're still at that stage where it's not AGI. And so in that sense, I don't think it looks that different from previous advancements we've had in software development, at least for now.
Yeah. Now for the fun bit, this I think is the final question. We like to end each of our episode on a more personal note. So as we kind of try to uncover your human prompt, as we all know, like this future of AI hinges on having this creative partnership between a human and an AI. And let's say you have this access to all-knowing, omniscient, omnipotent AI that does not hallucinate, and you get a chance to put in one prompt. It's not going to tell your secret. What is that one prompt that you want to ask this all-knowing, super intelligence AI?
So I would probably ask it. So I used to be a physicist, and there are many interesting unsolved questions in physics. I would probably
Grand
ask
unification.
That's definitely one we could talk about. I would ask it to take a stab at the cosmological constant problem. Because to me, that is why is there dark energy that permeates the universe and causes it to accelerate? On the one hand, it exists. On the other hand, it's a very small number that represents it. There's not a lot of that energy, but it does exist. And that is a very weird situation to have in physics. Like if it was zero, then it'd be like, okay, it's zero. But it's a small but positive number, and that has stumped physicists for a very long time. That to me is one of the deepest problems in physics. And it has all kinds of interesting implications. So I think I would ask about that. I might also ask it to give a mathematical definition of string theory, which is also something we don't really understand, but I'm worried I wouldn't understand its answer for that. And so I think I would stick to the
Hopefully it's smart enough to give an answer that we can all understand.
Perhaps, yes.
Yeah, I feel like this whole dark energy is like a stopgap measure to just fill in the blank of the unexplainable to make it sense for us. So do you believe that, at least from our current understanding, is the universe is still accelerating its expansion. So do you see like the universe one day collapsing back, like oscillating, or do you still believe the universe will continue to expand further? What is your belief? My belief is that
based on evidence, it will continue accelerating and expanding forever until our sky will become sparser because the galaxy clusters will kind of become more and more far apart. I think there's currently no evidence that for that to not happen, you'd probably need the cosmological constant to change over time.
Yeah.
And there's no evidence of that happening. So
no buffer overflows in the space.
You see, that's where physics has a very different leads you to a very different mental model than something like the Matrix, where you're kind of thinking of reality as an engineer. And so I feel like if I put my physics hat on, yes, I just go by the evidence, and the evidence is that we'll just keep accelerating. Yeah.
That's totally fair. Well, Guy, this was an amazing conversation. Thank you for being our guest, and then sharing your perspectives on vibe coding, Augment Code, future of AI. And I think the audience learned a lot today. Where can people find more about you and your company?
Yeah, so just go to augmentcode.com. You can download our coding assistant and start coding with it in minutes. We'd love to hear your feedback if you do try it out, but we're sure you'll see the value in the context engine, especially if you try it out on your larger projects. The more complicated, the better.
Nice. Well, thank you for being here.
Thanks a lot for having me. This was a lot of fun.